Hi, Andrea. My name is Jackie Kerr. I don't think we've worked together, but I'm the lead for the business analyst team on the registration standards and data quality. And then I guess what I'll do is I'll just tag somebody and then they can tag. So the next one I see under Angela is Abraham. So I'll tag Abraham to introduce himself.
Sure. Hi, Abraham Berhane, one of the business analysts on the RSTQ team. Oh, and I should tag somebody. I see Flo next on my attendee list.
Hi, Andrea. My name is Florinda, and I'm also a business analyst with RSDQ. Tagging Chantal.
Good afternoon. My name is Chantal, and I am part of the user readiness team, and I'm going to tag MC.
Hello, my name is Maria Clara, but the short name is MC. I am one of the business analysts from RSDQ. I'm going to tag Karen Beer.
Hi, my name is Karen Beer. I am lead for registration data quality team, and I'm tagging Chelsea.
My name is Chelsea Rivera. I'm a business analyst for RSDQ. I'll tag Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm one of the URs on Angela's team, and I will tag Miles.
Hi, I'm Miles. I'm part of the user readiness team. Yeah, and I'll tag Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm also one of the user readiness with registration standards and data quality, and I will tag Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm the new user readiness specialist. I think everyone's been tagged already, right?
Yep, perfect. So, Andrea, I brought these guys up to speed the little bit I knew, and I know that I probably didn't do a great job, but basically, I just let them know that you guys had developed this tool that is used during implementation and also can be used during sustainment. And this tool really kind of focuses more on the clerical side of things, like for the request lists and, the work queues, reports, work lists, that kind of stuff. And I let them know that the intention is that there is a spreadsheet that is utilized and somehow communicates with Discern, and then you pull data, and what you're doing is you're pulling data that shows the data that's being, like, in terms of, like, if there's 10 hanging encounters or past due encounters, it'll show that number versus, oh, Karen ran this report on Thursday. So it doesn't necessarily show you when a user generated the report, but the tool, you can run those reports and it'll just show you how the data is growing, if it's lessening or if it's increasing, and it kind of shows if people are monitoring those reports. So that's a little bit I mentioned. And then I said that you are the brainchild that will help us and train us and help us to understand it in a greater degree. So over to you to fill in all those gaps. And if I said anything wrong, please correct me. Thank you.
No, that was great, Karen. Thank you. That actually saves me from doing the first part of what I normally do, which is what is the WIP, but you've summarized it really well. So thank you for that. And I hope everyone understands that when I say WIP, it's the work in progress, kind of like in scheduling appointment book, but instead we're talking about our Excel. So I'm actually just gonna share my screen here, so we can start walking through first of all, what does this actually look like? And then how do we populate it? All right. Are you all able to see my screen? Oops. Wow, my thing went a little crazy there for a sec.
Yep, we can see it.
Thank you. Okay, so what I've pulled up here is the WIP that we use for VGH, so our most recent activation. I'll kind of walk you through what each of the columns are first, and then we'll walk through how to actually populate each of these areas. And I do want to preface this whole presentation by saying that this was something that we came up with my skill set that I have in Excel. And Karen has told me that there's quite a variety of technical minds on this call. So I'm very excited, because if there is any way that you think, oh, why is she doing that? We could do that way better. We're totally open to that. Any way that this can be improved will be a bonus for everybody. So I'm just going to show you how we've done it, and we're always open to process improvements. Okay, so first off, this has many tabs, and I'm sure you're all familiar with what each of these mean. But like Karen mentioned, this is mostly focused on clerical work, with probably just the exception of the message center pools. So here we have request lists, we have work queue monitor, we have our message center pools, all the areas that use requisition manager, and then a few tabs for some of the work lists that we monitor, like the past due arrivals and the referral encounters. And even the tabs themselves differ per activation. For example, for BC Cancer, where they use a large amount of recurring encounters, I think we even had a tab where we were just monitoring, I think it's called the recurring discharge work list. So there's definitely some changes that we can make per site. Now within each tab, obviously, if this is the request list tab, we have a list of all of the request lists for that site. We were able to get this using an extract that the scheduling team did for us, because it's quite easy for them to just say, pull me all of the queues that are attached to a VGH core location. So they were able to do this mapping for us quite easily. So it's just a queue and any core locations that would be associated to that queue. This ED referral one is actually quite specific to VGH. So I wouldn't worry too much about this, but it really has to do with which clinics does the ED refer to, because they generally have like a higher priority in terms of getting patients in. But this is just another way to see how the WIP can be used for other things as well. So I'm just going to hide this. We also have here whether somebody or a clinic uses requisition manager or not. And this is attached to the request list, because the general workflow for requisition manager is, if I'm working on an appointment or a request and my clinic uses requisition manager, then I should also be using requisition manager to look at any labs, cardiology diagnostics, anything that may have been ordered along with that appointment. So that's why this says either yes or no. And then once we kind of get the core, so this is what we normally start with, this gets passed on to the site. And usually informatics from that site will present this to the operations managers, and they will start assigning themselves and specific people in terms of who is going to be working these lists. So for example, they would have shown this to Tiana Sherman, and I'm just going to quickly do a filter here so we can see all of the lists that Tiana is responsible for. And she would have assigned herself to all of these areas. And then she would have assigned somebody. So in her case, she had a clerical pool, and she couldn't really tell us exactly who was going to be working on each of the lists, but she had assured us that she had a clerical pool to pull from. Alternatively, other people have given us specific names. So for example, Jamie McDowell, so I believe this was, yeah, transplant, could actually tell us exactly who we should be contacting, or who should be working on this list in particular, in case there were any issues. So you can see there's a mix. Some people have given us pool, some people have given us exact names and how to contact them. Any questions so far about what this is? Okay. Also, if anyone has any questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time. Because I'm sure if you have burning questions, it's better to ask them now than to save them to the end when it's no longer probably relevant to what we're showing. Okay, so once this is all filled out, this is usually done pre-go live. We go into the actual numbers that are coming in. I'm just gonna hide these so we get a better view. I removed all of the future ones or the old ones from VGH, but I've saved 2 days. So you'll see November 7th was when we went live, or on the Monday for VGH. So this was the very first poll I did at our VGH Go Live at the time, where we looked at the number of pending requests. And I've kept the second day here as well, just so you can kind of see where all the changes are. So the pending request is basically the total number of requests that are sitting in that queue at that point in time. So you can tell here I put in the date. So this was pulled November 7th at 9 o'clock. The following day, probably not best practice, but sometimes it gets really busy. I pulled it at 6 p.m. instead. Generally, we like to pull it at the same time every day so that it's just better data quality in that case.
So Andrea, this means that pulling of this it's not an ops job. It is really a manual function.
At this time, yes. So that is an excellent point.
Okay.
We should, that is a great point, because you're right. We can just keep it, if it generates a report for an ops job, then it doesn't matter when somebody's available to do the report. They can just do it based on the report that is pulled at that time.
So then that we could maybe work with, I guess, a reporting team on something like that.
Yes, that is a great point.
Okay.
Wow, it's been 2 years and we haven't thought about that.
Fantastic.
Right.
We like to, well, it's because we like to take shortcuts. We like to have efficiency.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, wow, thank you. I hope we get that in time for like the next activation.
You can trust our team to try to be on that.
Yeah. Okay, so those are the dates and times. So we got the pending request. So the daily change column is really just from the day that I pulled this, what is the change from the previous day? So you'll see here 8, and it's in red, which means there are 8 more requests in this queue than there were the previous day. Or it could be in green and in the negative, which is a good thing, which means there are 2 fewer requests in this queue from the previous day. So you'll see that after a few days, you can start to see trends of requests either like being worked, everything's like green, and things are going down, so it's great. Or we can see the opposite, where it's like red all the way and the numbers are getting higher and higher each time, which is usually a red flag for us. Or sometimes it's just a 0, which means nothing's been going in or nothing happened to be there whenever we would be pulling the report. And the last column that we look at is the date of the last clerical action. So basically this tells us if that queue is actively getting worked. For example, complex wound. You can tell here, if we were pulling this on November 8th, no one had actually touched this queue for the last 4 days. So the combination of red and it going up, plus a very like a last clerical action date that is way past the current date, then that's a big red flag, because that means no one's even looking at this queue at all. So you'll see, this one was a big one for us, October 26th, pulmonary function. That means they hadn't really looked at it since cutover. So this information gives us a lot of information for us to make conclusions on.
I really look forward to having this, you know, presented at the ops manager group, because I feel like that's where it's been a gap. Well, we weren't even aware of this tool, which is fantastic. So
and I know we talked about that, and I think that's a great idea, because then you can even like bring them in here and filter it by manager, and then they can see which of their clinics are doing well or not.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Andrea, that last clerical action date, is that just looking at the WIP itself to see when's the last date that there was a positive daily change, or is that somehow pulling from when they actually ran each list?
It's if there's any sort of action made within the request list. So that could be, I think they even narrowed it down to the action of book and the action of complete request. And I think there's even a schedule, like if you right click on a request list, you can hit schedule. So it's one of those actions that the report will pull. Okay, so it's not when they last ran the lists, essentially it's just when's the last time they actioned something off of a list. Exactly. Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, good question. The other thing that's on here that I'd like to point out, and this is more of a manual check for us, because this unknown queue, we monitor it during go live as well. But as we all know, I think when things go into the unknown queue, it lands on like an LGH med imaging core location for some reason. So this one ends up being a manual pull for us, because it wouldn't show up amongst the VGH core locations. So we can look at that later as well. Okay, so now I've given kind of a summary. Does anyone have any questions before I go into actually pulling this from Discern? Okay. So I'm going to open Discern reporting portal. I'm guessing everybody here knows how to open Discern, right? I don't need to go into that detail.
Yep, we do.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So the first report, and I've actually included it here. So request lists and volumes audit. This is the first report that we want to pull. So if you don't have it already saved, you can always just search it, request lists and volume audit, and I'm just going to run this. So from here, the only prompt I really need to select is the location, depending on which one you're using or you're doing at the time. So in this case, we're doing VGH, and I was also doing UBC at the time, but I won't click that right now, so it'll probably take too long. I can just click VGH and hit execute. And this will take really long again. So just pretend like I hit execute and I already have it run earlier from earlier today. But that's all you need to do. Just click the core location. So I'm going to cancel out of this. And this will return this. So you can see all of the queues here, all the scheduling locations here, the schedulable pending requests. So the number of requests that are currently sitting in the queue. And there's a few other things here as well. At one point, because we were focusing on the oldest of the old, we were also monitoring how many requests there were that were older than 1 week. But eventually we stopped doing that. And then this is the date of last clerical action that we were talking about. And then the question earlier was, what was it pulling from? And it even says here what the last clerical action was within that request list. So it could be just a booking, a modification, a cancellation, a reschedule, etc., etc. So this is where the formulas are going to come in. So word of warning. So the first step is to copy this whole thing into another Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to select all, and on my keyboard, I'm going to hit Control-C. And I'm going to go back to my WIP, and I'm just going to open up a new sheet. I'm going to erase this eventually. And I'm just going to paste all of the data here. Going to make this a little bigger for y'all to see. So this is where I'm going to do my, first off, my concatenate. So I'm going to add a new column here. And basically what I'm going to do is create a unique ID that combines the queue and the scheduling location. And the reason I'm doing this is you'll notice there are some queues that have 2 core locations within that one queue. If I just did my VLOOKUP against the one BMT feature requests, then it would show me just the total between the 2. So it would show 417 for BMT instead of being able to differentiate between the daycare and the doctor's clinic. So I'm going to do my unique ID, which is concatenate. And I know this is being recorded, so that's why I'm going to go a little bit faster than I normally would. And I'm just going to combine the queue, comma, and I'm going to combine it with a scheduling location. So that's our unique identifier. I'm just going to double click on the right, bottom right here, make it go all the way down. Okay, so now I can do a VLOOKUP to basically match this, each queue, to the right one. I'm actually going to unhide this because I need my VLOOKUP column here. And I'm going to do my formula. Pulls, VLOOKUP, open bracket, select my VLOOKUP column, comma, go back to the sheet we just did. And I'm going to select column D because that's my unique ID to the number of pending requests. I'm going to do comma 2 because it's column 1, column 2, comma, and I want an exact match. So I'm going to put false, close bracket, and I'm going to hit enter. So that will pull anything that actually exists currently within the request list. Any questions about that one? That one usually gets people when I show them that. Okay, no questions. So basically this shows us, the adult metabolic feature requests now has 34 in it. This one is 155, so BMT's been doing great since we left. That's amazing. Cardiac echo, though, quite the opposite. They've increased quite a bit since we left there. Then we can do our formula for our daily change, which is just equals the number of pending requests from today minus the ones from the day before. And that will automatically populate. So you can see all the greens and reds like we did earlier. And then lastly, the date of the last clerical action, which is also going to be a VLOOKUP. I'm going to do equals VLOOKUP, open bracket, select my unique identifier here, comma, go back to sheet 5, go to my unique ID, and then select all the way to my date of last clerical action, which is column G. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth column. So I'm going to do 4. And again, I want an exact match. So that will populate all of that. Any questions? Easy.
I think the BAs, are you guys feeling okay about these then?
The formula, I think that's the only part that I think I
Yeah.
need to get used to.
And we can always take, like, if you guys need to take Excel training, I think there's courses internally too that can maybe, that we can.
That
you
sounds
guys can
good.
kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I can go through that again if you would prefer.
That's okay, because I
It's okay,
think
yeah.
the good thing is we've got this recorded. Andrea, do you happen to have any documentation on this or?
Yes, we
Okay,
do.
cool.
Though it might be, we've made some changes to the reporting since VGH. So it's actually a lot easier now than it was when we were running it at VGH, but we have an SOP I can send you.
Okay, awesome.
I can send it what we have now, and then you can work on updating it because we'll need to update it for BC Cancer, which is our first activation anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then send that the updated one as well. Okay, so I guess I'll just keep going then. The next step.
Sorry,
here-
Andrea, sorry.
No, it's good.
You've
Yeah.
got your cursor exactly where I wanted. How come it's
Okay,
saying
yes.
NA?
Yeah, so that's the next thing here.
Okay.
So if it's showing NA, it could be one of two things. Actually, it's only if it's showing NA, but it is one of two things. Number one, there are no requests in that particular queue, so it's not pulling into the report. So this discern report will never pull like, AMP BMT feature requests and then 0. If there's nothing in the request list, it wouldn't even show up on this report at all. The other reason why it would not be there is if I accidentally spelled something wrong here for some reason. So if I did a misspelling and it shows an error, it's just because it doesn't match. That usually only happens if you run this for the first time, and then you kind of get them all right. So I'm pretty confident that everything that says NA just means there's 0 in there. So what I would do, sorry.
No, I said that's great.
Okay. Yay. What I normally do is I will copy all of this entire column. So I'm going to hit Control-C on my keyboard, and I'm going to paste it as values because I don't want the formula there anymore. Because once I delete my sheet, the formulas it'll get messed up. So I'm just going to paste it as values here. So values. And then I can do a Control-F replace. So anything that has the hashtag NA can be replaced with a 0. And that's how we clean it up, which you'll see here is the aftermath of all of that. And then we do the same thing for the date of last clerical action. So select the whole thing, paste as values, and then we can just do the same control replace. But this time I just put a hyphen instead. And usually after that is when we start looking, and then we actually start looking for, oh no, that's a lot. That's a big change. 290. 100, that's a huge change. And then you get the ones that are good. So Infusion request list also has been doing a great job since we left. They've managed to reduce the request list by almost 1,000. So that's fantastic. So the only manual one here is the unknown queue. But I'm guessing this is already monitored by your team. Is that right, Karen? Or is this monitored by somebody else?
I don't think it's monitored by, it's not monitored by our team, is it, Angela? You're on mute, double mute.
No.
No, I'm here. Can you repeat that? Sorry, I'm orienting a new staff member as well at the same time.
Are we running the unknown queue at all? Row
No.
85? No, I didn't think so.
Okay. Yeah, so we end up doing a manual on it. So I just pulled up scheduling appointment book on the side and the inquiry request by queue and then unknown request list. There's actually quite a few in here now since we went live, and there's been a lot so far for infusions. So we would have flagged this during go live.
I don't even understand how, like, is that a literal unknown request queue, or stuff just falls into this request queue somehow? I don't even know how that works.
Generally, if the order is broken, or I wouldn't say the order, but if the connection between the order or the request list is broken, either because the build is broken or because the physicians placed an order like on the incorrect encounter, then it can land here. I think in Vancouver, when this was happening a lot, it was because people were placing orders on the wrong encounter.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So we, of course, want to monitor this because this means that this patients are not getting their appointments booked because nobody's looking at this queue.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think we should definitely find out who's looking at these because that's a lot in there right now, 81, and they're quite recent. 2023.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. And did we have a name attached? We didn't, right? That one didn't even have a name or a manager associated with it.
No, because at the time it was just us. Like we were just the ones monitoring it. We don't usually expect the ops managers to monitor the unknown queue.
No.
I feel like it might be like the scheduling IMITs resources that were responsible for this, but I don't know if that was just during the go live period and then it passes on to somebody else after.
Well, and I don't know what kind of sleuthing you would have to do to figure out what has caused, like you said, something could be broken, right? So maybe it does make sense. It's the IMITS folks that are looking at that. I don't know. Agreed.
Yeah, because you're right. It does require quite a bit of investigation. Like I would probably first figure out like who like ordered it in the first place. And then, yeah, this was from BMT. So they ordered it from the VGH BMT location, which is probably why it fell into the unknown, because they're ordering for an infusion.
Oh.
Which would be to the medical infusion clinic. But they ordered it from the VGH BMT doctors, which they probably shouldn't be doing. But I'm not sure because it's been a while, so I don't know what the reasoning is. But during go live, they would typically create a JIRA ticket for each of these, and then somebody would try to figure out what's wrong, and then the remediation is usually to cancel the existing appointments, and then somebody needs to speak to the provider to reorder it.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
I see this more as a actual clinical thing instead of a reg or a scheduling thing, but I could be wrong.
No, you're correct. It's generally like from the ordering piece, which is usually a clinician.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So that's the request list. And the nice thing about this too is you can see the individual locations wait list as well and how they're all moving, and the triage lists for those that still use it. None anymore, apparently. Okay. Any questions before I move on to work queue monitor? All right. Next, work queue monitor. So this is exactly the same in terms of the manager and assigned resources. In this case, we just have the work queue monitor queue, their fax number, whether something, the number is new or if it's ported or it's just a routing, what it's for, and then same in terms of the manager and assigned resource. Just gonna hide this so we can all see better. For this one, I kind of kept it so we can see the trends, but this is what like a completely filled out WIP would look like throughout the go live period. So I'm just gonna go to the very end. So we can do the next day. I'm actually just gonna delete this for now because it'll probably be easier for all of us. So we'll pretend like this is March 27th at 15:41. So the report is the work queue monitor statistics report in Discern. And you'll find the steps are actually quite similar for every single report. So I would look for my work queue monitor statistics report. I would run it. And then this time around, I would need to fill in a few more of the reporting prompts than I did with the request list. So I'm going to do an exportable CSV. I'm going to do a detailed CSV. For the work queue monitor name, because we're doing VGH, I would just search for VGH and I would select everything that has VGH. The start date is usually the day that we go live. So at VGH, I was always selecting November 5th because that's when we went live. For today, because this will also take a really long time, I would just select like a week or so. And then the end date is just whatever date it is that day, because we're really just tracking the number of documents that are currently in that queue. So I would hit execute on this. But again, I already have this run because it will take a while. So I'm just going to cancel out. And you'll notice quite similar. We have the queue name. We have the queue description. This time around, though, we have the detail of each document that has come in. So we're actually going to do a little bit of data manipulation to get the summary that we need. So again, I'm going to copy this. So select all, hit Control-C on my keyboard, and then create a new sheet where I will paste all of this data. And from here, we're going to do a bit of data cleanup. So I'm just going to make this a table so we can filter. The first thing I'm going to do is create a pivot table. So we're going to go to summarize with pivot table up here. I'm going to hit OK. So pivot table, in case you haven't used it yet, is just a way to summarize data. So in this case, we want to summarize the queue name, the number of batches within that queue. So I'm going to put that in values. You can see it all here. But I'm only really interested in the specific status of everything but deleted and completed. Because if it's deleted, we don't really care. If it's completed, then it's already been indexed, so we also don't really care. So we only care about the ones that are still sitting on the queue, which would be in the status of available, clarify, faxed, or new. So there's actually not that many for a lot of these places. So from here, we can do the same VLOOKUP that we did earlier. So I'm going to go back to my work queue monitor. And I'm going to do another VLOOKUP. So equals VLOOKUP, open bracket. I'm going to select the queue this time, comma. I'm going to go to my pivot table, select A to B. And again, this is column 2. So I'm going to do 2. And I want an exact match. So this time around, there's more zeros than there are not empty. So you'll see that a lot of these places actually don't have a lot of documents in there right now that were received in February anyway. And then similar to the other one, our daily change will just be today's minus yesterday's. Oh, wow. Again, lots of clinics that are doing a really good job after we left. It's great. Okay, the date of oldest new document is again something that requires a little bit of data manipulation. So I'm going to go back to, actually, before I do that, I'm going to copy and paste this into values like we did earlier so I don't lose anything. So copy, paste as values. Okay, now I'm going to do the date of oldest new document. So I'm going to go back to my handy dandy data that we copied and pasted from earlier. So similar to the date of last clerical action, we only want to see the statuses that are in new, basically meaning no one has really touched it. I know there's some exceptions to that because you can like kind of click on it and then you can see it and then decide I'm not going to do anything about this right now and it will still say new, but this is the best status that we could come up with. So I basically want to delete everything here except for new. So I'm going to uncheck new. And I'm going to delete every single row on this table that is not in the new status. And this might take a while because I just realized I just selected like, oh, perfect, excellent. That was fast. So I'm going to clear my filters from here. I'm going to make sure that I sort my date received from the oldest to the newest, so that when I remove duplicates by queue name, I will only be left with queues that have documents in the status of new and the oldest document dated that they have. So this means that the psoriasis and phototherapy clinic has a document and still in the new status since February 20th, 2023. It's probably not great. It's been a month. And we can pull this information back onto this tab as well. So I'm going to do a VLOOKUP, go to my queue, go back here for my queue name to the date that it was received. And this was 5 columns. Oh, that didn't work. I might have to reassess that particular formula. But anyway, does anyone have any questions about that? I know this is probably one of the more complicated ones to do.
Yeah, so I can like just the thought running through my mind is I can see how this would, it's fantastic. I
Mhm.
love it, but I could see how it could be labor intensive, like for someone to have to kind of do this on a daily basis. You're generating the reports, then you're taking it and creating these kind of mini, you know, lookup using VLOOKUP, like mini little whatever you call them. The word is escaping me, but you're doing a lot of manipulation, right? To create these formulas and then get it displaying in this manner. And
Exactly, yeah.
especially if you're doing it for the request list, then the work you monitor, then the message center, then
Yes.
like I could see that it would have taken. So if you were to summarize or just guesstimate for me, like when you were running them for VGH, how long was it taking you? Or
So I actually managed to teach a BA during VGH to do this. Certainly in the beginning, it was taking like the whole day. That's why you were seeing some that were like run at 6 o'clock, because we would do like request list at 9.
wow.
And then we
Yeah.
do work you monitor at 10. And then we do message center pools at like 1. But I will say we were 4 weeks in there. By week 2, she was able to do it within maybe 2 or 3 hours
Wow.
every single day.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of time.
It is for sure. It's a lot of daily management. So that's why I was like, okay, what could be operationalized? Like, you know, but then the thing is, you're not just running a report, you need an ops job that will send you the file in an Excel format. And I don't even know if ops jobs do stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they might even, now that you say that actually, Karen, I feel like they have the ability, kind of like when they're running extracts and then it auto generates into like a SharePoint folder.
Yes, yeah.
Over.
Yeah.
They can probably do something similar where it just goes into a folder every day.
Right.
For it to go. And also, like, we were doing this daily during go live. I think there's opportunity to think about maybe just doing this once a week and just seeing the changes week over week instead of day over day.
Right, right.
Because we're not seeing drastic changes like we normally would at go live during the sustainment period.
Yeah. And I feel like, Andrea, once you handed it over, I would really be surprised if there was somebody running it from a sustainment perspective.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that there were only, even BC Cancer, they only really did it for a couple months after we left. And that was because they did have their issues with the clerical.
Right. Yeah.
But I think now, I don't even know if they do it like weekly, monthly, or even at all.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
But that's also probably why there's a lot of remediation.
Yeah, totally. I could see that something like this should be done. And, you know, probably like implementation, I can see trying to run it more frequently, but sustainment, I like the idea of once a week or bi-weekly or monthly or something, right?
Agreed. Yeah. I think as long as it's being monitored and there's an agreement of how often, then I think that's the important piece.
Yeah.
And just because I know we only have 7 minutes left, I don't think there's any point in me going into the other tabs. So I would take any questions or if there's anything else that we want to talk about. Oh, I did have a question for you actually that came up earlier today. So if you were to kind of take this on, would the plan be to do it for all sites? So it would be for like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So it would be nice because in some capacity, our team has been running these kind of reports. Like Angela's team has been running some of these manually every day, you know, and kind of looking at them. But this is much more effective to give them a viewpoint of, hey, it's being worked on or it isn't, like the date of the last action. That's fantastic. So it really does give us an idea of like, are the users even opening this? When was the last time? So it gives you some kind of indicator. So we have in some ways we are doing some of this work, but not to this detail. And it really is something that should be done for all sites. We do. So the intention is that, yeah, we would want to set up some kind of process that's manageable. I do worry for our folks, and our BAs are probably got their eyes like, what the heck? This is going to be a lot of work. So, we would want to be very, mindful of what the workload impact is. And so what would make sense, but, in terms of data quality, it is right up our alley, and that work does kind of sit with us, right? In terms of registration standards and best practices and encouraging the proper use of the system. So yeah, it just means though, are we staffed to, can we create this process to be more efficient, which we love. You've done a great job already, but what else could we do to maybe even have it a little more automated? And then, and what does follow-up look like? What is the frequency of the follow-up? I know that when I spoke with Rosa was really keen, and she did want, help in at least even population of like, who's the manager of each area, who's the clerk, like, how do we get that? She doesn't want to just be handed over this tool without some kind of work. So yeah, so we would be involved, in the development moving forward, like for this, the upcoming sites. I gather, you guys have kind of handed that over for us to develop, right? It's not something that you are hoping we will take it on, or someone would, right?
In the future, yes, like after we would leave each site.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And actually saying that, if there is interest, or if there is going to be somebody that you're already thinking about that might be doing this, happy to involve them in our upcoming activations where we will be running this every day.
Okay. And what are your upcoming activations that you're thinking of? Like
so BC Cancer is our first big one.
Right, exactly.
And that's gonna be June 26th. And maybe, one or two of the days that we're running it, they would like to be part of the run, or.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, to be honest, Andrea, I thought you were thinking that the development of this tool for BC Cancer Prince George would be our deliverable. So it's kind of nice to know that you are planning on developing the tool for Prince George, and we can kind of partner with you on it. Okay.
For sure, yes. I didn't want to, I offered across the board for all the activations for me to be part of the first one.
Okay, fantastic.
Knowing that it's everyone's first time.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. Lovely. So have you developed anything or it's too early for Prince George just yet?
It's still a bit early. We normally do it at least after SIT, so that everything is kind of stabilized by that point. So it'll probably be, SIT is April 24th for us. So we'll probably start thinking about doing it in early May.
Okay, that sounds good. BAs, Flo, Abraham, Chelsea, what are you guys thinking? Jackie, questions? It's probably going to be this BA team versus the user readiness team. User readiness, we wanted to have them attend and just see this and see the potential, but really it's probably going to be the BAs that will be developing this tool.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I probably overloaded everyone with information. And it's the end of the day on a Monday.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, I need a coffee for this one. Okay, no, that was really fantastic. I'm glad we recorded it, because I wouldn't I'm not very good at that Excel stuff. So I do encourage like, Andrea, do you know of any internal courses like I think this is like you were being so humble at the beginning saying, oh, I'm just like, if there's a better way of doing things, I think you did a fantastic job on developing those.
There are a couple of courses on the Fraser side, Karen.
Yeah, I do remember, but honestly,
Mhm.
I don't know if it gets into this.
It does pivot tables and
Like-
VLOOKUPs and stuff like that.
Does it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
So
'Cause
I'll find the links to those and I'll send them to everybody. And
that would be
if you have
amazing.
trouble enrolling, we're Lower Mainland Consolidated, so we can take Fraser courses as well. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. That would be awesome. Thank you so much, Angela. So yeah, I think that would